Got the block back up in the engine stand. It's been chemically cleaned at the machine shop. They put it in a tank of caustic material that removes the paint, scale, oil, anything that could contaminate the rebuilt engine. All that's been cleaned out, but when we get it back, there's a lot more cleanup left to do. One of the things that I did was to treat this with a chemical rust destroyer. I put a product on here that this surface was almost orange with rust. I put a product on here that seeps into the pores of the cast iron and kills the rust on contact. So this white powdery look that you see, it's not a powder, it's actually the rust that's been converted and destroyed. And so that's number one, to get rid of that problem. Number two is to start cleaning the gasket surfaces of the engine. This is, of course, the deck of the engine. This is where the head gasket fits. And to use some sort of a sharp scraper to scrape loose the foreign material on all the gasket surfaces. The next process would be to further clean those surfaces down to a bright metal finish. On the deck, I use a block, a flat, fairly hard block with a piece of fine grit sandpaper. This happens to be 320 grit paper, to just shine that surface and maintain that flatness that's so critical here. You wouldn't want to use a power buffer or any sort of a grinder or anything on this, because it would leave grooves and places that would prevent the head gasket from sealing like it should. So maintain the flatness, use something that's flat and firm. An area that really needs to be cleaned and special attention given to is this area here, this step where the liner fits in. The land of the liner fits down in here. It must fit solid, even. There must not be any foreign material left underneath the liner when it's seated. We'll be checking liner height protrusion in a little while, and getting this stuff out will give a real accurate reading of our liner height. So take a wire brush, a scraper, pick anything that you need to get down in that corner and remove the carbon and the scale and get that out. Another piece of fine grit sandpaper can be used to buff clean the area where the liner slides through. You never want to remove metal material from any of these surfaces. Only clean it, only buff it till the foreign material is gone. So you can use the sandpaper anywhere that's needed. Other areas as well. Works really good. Just keep it really fine and not a heavy grit. Good time while there's no bearings or anything in the block, anything that's going to be scratched or damaged from grit, is to go down into the bolt holes, the tapped surfaces, the tapped holes into the block, and clean those out. Just run a tap down into them, especially your head gasket areas, because you want to be able to oil those bolts, insert them, torque them down, and get an accurate torque for the head. So tap out the holes, make sure everything's clean. Another tool that works good at this time is a small LED light on a wand. This one you can go down, you can see what's actually down in those dark holes. See if you've got work to do, if there's something down in there that may obstruct a bolt or a water passage that still has too much scale or debris in it. This small hole here at the back of the deck goes straight down to the camshaft bushing on the back of the engine. That's how the oil gets from that camshaft up to the surface of the deck, through the head gasket, into the head, and oils the valve train. So another place to make sure that it's clean and free of foreign material. Something that works good for cleaning out those areas is nylon brushes like these little spiral brushes on a long wand. You can insert them in like that, Clean those areas. Smaller ones, take smaller brushes, run it down in there, make sure everything's out. I use a needle scaler. This is typically a tool for welding, for scaling off slag after a weld. But this is a good tool for getting down inside the water jacket and cleaning out the rust and scale and debris that accumulates inside the water jacket. These are vibrating rods on here. When you press these vibrate, and it's very effective in knocking the rust off down inside. Good thing to do afterwards is to blow the debris out. Make sure everything is cleaned out before you start assembling any new parts into the engine. Don't ever assume that your block is clean when you get it back from a machine shop. Sometimes if you have machine work done on it, there will be metal filings in the oil ports. Remove all the plugs, blow air through it, send a solvent cleaner through the oil ports, and just make sure that you know that 100% that the block is clean inside and out. I'm going to turn this around here and we'll have a look at the bottom end and talk about cleaning up the main bearing journals and another look at some of the oil passages. Got the engine turned around so we can have a look at the bottom end here. A couple things we want to be concerned about, and that is number one, the main bearing journals. You want to clean out any foreign material that may have become embedded on the surface of the block here and would get underneath the main bearing and create a high spot or a hot spot in the bearing, cause wear, possible engine failure if the bearing was to seize onto the crankshaft. So it's important to get anything and everything. Use your finger to assess the smoothness of it. If there happens to be a burr or something like that, it can be removed carefully with the fine piece of sandpaper, or if necessary, just lightly, very lightly with a fine file, and then surface it off carefully with an abrasive pad. Here's another look at the oil passages that need to be cleaned out. So again, with something that would insert into the passages, clean anything and everything that you can find that relates to oil. Oil passes through the block here up into this roll pin that's pressed into this, and that is a passage that oils the balancer. We talked about how the balancer gets its oil when we rebuilt it. This is one of those passages that goes down and feeds oil from the crankshaft through the webbing of the block itself right into the balancer. So clean that out. Anything and everything that you can find for the particular engine that you're working on. Look in the book, trace out the oil schematic and where the oil comes from and where it goes to, and make sure that all those passages are clean. In this block, there's a plug here and another one here on the front, and there's an oil galley that goes all the way down the side of the engine. The oil pump produces oil under pressure into that galley, and from that galley it feeds every main bearing journal, consequently the crankshaft, the camshaft, the balancer, and then forces it up into the head, and then splash oils almost everything else. Oh, and also the rods as well. They oil off of the crankshaft rod journals. So trace it out, find out where the oil passages are in your engine, make sure that they're clean and free to circulate the oil. One of the most important things in good oil or good maintenance at this point for the engine. We've left this surface dirty here on the pan to show you how to clean that off. Like I said, first of all, you scrape any foreign material off with the scraper. Old gasket material from the pan gasket. And then I like to use an abrasive wheel to buff that clean. Another area on the bottom side here that needs to be addressed is the oil, or the O-ring grooves for the liners. Those are right in here at the bottom of the liner. Those O-rings seal the water from coming into the engine oil and the engine oil from coming into the cooling system. So it's important that they be clear and free and able to accept the brand new O-rings to accomplish that purpose. A couple of different products or items that you can use to clean those out. One of them is any sort of a wire wheel that you can get down inside there to clean the old scale off of that surface. Anything for the particular tool that you have that would accomplish that would be acceptable. Another thing that I've adapted for use is this is a small metal pick with a rounded tip here. And so I can put that into the groove and clean that out and work my way around that groove until I can feel that, until that groove is completely clean. Make your own tools, do anything you have to get in there and make sure that that area is clean. Very, very important. In this block, there are 3 grooves, an upper, middle, and lower. The O-rings for the upper and lower are of different material. One to be compatible with the cooling system, the water. The other one to be compatible with oil. So your instructions in your book and the instructions in the parts that you get for replacement parts will tell you which one to put where. Some blocks, some engines have 3 O-rings that they use, some only 2. This particular one has 3 grooves and only 2 O-rings that it uses. The middle O-ring groove is left open. The reason it's left open is for the water that may seep past the top O-ring to have a place to accumulate and escape. In the side of the block is a small hole that passes into that middle O-ring groove. So it's important to make sure that groove is clear and open to allow that water to escape. It's very similar to the hole on the water pump that allows the water to seep out and get away from the bearing. Same idea here. It's allowed to escape so that it doesn't migrate down into the crankcase, into the engine oil. So make sure these are open. I've seen instances where people had a little seep or a leak out of there and they thought that was a problem, so they plugged it with something to keep it from happening. That only compounds the problem and eventually causes you to have to go in and repair the engine. I can show you where that comes out. If I insert this drill bit, this cleaning bit, you can see how it comes out into the middle O-ring groove right there. So leave that open, don't put anything in it. This engine, when I took it apart, had an O-ring in that groove. Somebody at some point thought that it had 3 grooves, so it needed 3 O-rings, so they had installed a 3rd O-ring in that groove.